Hi, this is Matt Donegan from Challenger Stories. I'm here with Alistair. Alistair's the co-founder and CTO of Ohalo, an enterprise unstructured data company. Alistair, what does that actually mean, an enterprise unstructured data company?
So, first of all, unstructured data. Well, first of all, Matt, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Unstructured data. What that typically means is going to be that's your OneDrives, your SharePoints, your file servers, your Google Drives, anything that contains documents, Office documents that we all use in our day-to-day work. That's unstructured data to us. What typically happens in the enterprise, this is a pain that's more acutely felt in the enterprise because there's all these great tools out there to help enterprises manage their structured data or their semi-structured data. It's something that we've been working on for decades now. There's data lakes, there's data warehouses, there's all these different ways to manage structured data, right? What remains to be done, what's a bit of a mess, what's difficult to manage is unstructured data, like these documents. It's difficult to understand what's inside them, and there could be risky information in them. There could be there are implications from data protection and data regulation standpoint, and there are also just unmined valuable information in these documents that's hard to exploit and use in your day-to-day operations if you're not managing them properly. So we, as an unstructured data company, we are very, very much focused on solving those problems, helping companies manage those data sources, and doing it specifically at the enterprise level, right? That's something that we are built from the ground up to do as a company and as a product. Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple of questions around that. So large
sure.
companies, huge volumes of data. By the sounds of it, I'm guessing that actually a lot of this is to do with legacy data. So stuff that's being documents and PDFs and just documents that have been sitting in the background, accumulated over the years. People don't really know the contents in it. There might be confidential information in there might be valuable information, and actually that information hasn't surfaced. And if it did surface and it surfaced in the wrong way, then there may be a significant problem with it. Is that correct? Am I kind of summarizing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, it's actually just not even about legacy data. It's even the data that we're creating today.
Right.
So even in SharePoints, generally the data protection and the data privacy professionals at an enterprise are asking themselves relatively basic questions about their entire unstructured data landscape because it's the most unmanageable, right? So they're just asking themselves, where is this data? What type of data is it? Why do I have this data? How long do I need to keep it? And am I implementing data minimization and lifecycle management around this data? It's difficult to do that. If you think about it, a small company, mid-sized company, they can get by with using, maybe they have everything on just a few Google Drives and personal drives, or just a few SharePoints and OneDrives. It's relatively manageable. But once you get into the next level, that next level of scale, it's just completely unmanageable. You have SharePoints that are being created every day, and you don't know what's in there. And you don't know which teams are creating it and what. You don't know if those teams know how long to keep that information, and there's no cleanup afterwards. After the teams move on to another project, that data just stays in there. So even the data that we're creating today, a lot of times at that enterprise level, it just becomes an almost intractable problem. Okay. So that's our product, the DataXray. The way we sort of approach this problem, I could talk about that.
Please, yeah, I want to find out.
We are very much we've been building DataXray for about 7 or 8 years now, and from the start we were very much focused on building out state-of-the-art classification technology, right? So we have been. It even means simple technological solutions like word lists and regular expressions, right? Those are super fast, and you can just scan all of your entire data landscape to ensure that you don't have credit card numbers or you don't have bank accounts in all of these different tools. And then we've also from the start been using machine learning and natural language processing in order to detect things like people's names or locations. We've always had very fine-tuned and fast machine learning models that detect that kind of sensitive data. And finally, recently, the whole unstructured data space has been very exciting recently, to say the least, especially with everything with generative AI and LLMs. That just unlocks a whole new level of power in terms of classification that you can do on these documents now. So you can use an LLM, for example, in DataXray. You can use an LLM in order to categorize documents. So if you have a big mess of a SharePoint that nobody has opened up in 6 months, you can point the DataXray to it, do your X-ray, it will categorize all the documents in there, understanding if they're invoices or CVs or claim forms. And with the results of that, you can sort of build a classification system and understand what you're supposed to do with this data now. You understand that they are invoices and that they should actually be retained for 7 years and then archived. And it gives you a way of using this AI in order to classify your data and then do something with it and do it in a way that is previously addressing a completely intractable problem, right? It was always incredibly difficult for enterprises to do this stuff. And it's just recently that we sort of have the technology in order to help out with this stuff at that scale, right?
So, question for you about the use of data X-ray, and that is the pain that it solves. Is this a highly acute pain? Is it minor inconvenience that there are these documents with various data attributes, various information, or is there a degree of risk to those businesses that haven't done their research or don't know what's in these documents? I guess what I'm asking is it a vitamin pill or is it a painkiller?
Right. It's even more than that. Because there's two sort of classes of use cases that we tackle here, right? And there's one of them that's the preventative use cases, and then there's the proactive use cases. So there's a class of use cases which is about data compliance and data security. We've been doing that. That's been our bread and butter for a long time. For example, that's like identifying files for personal data regulations or financial regulations or health regulations, or governments will need to track exactly what they have stored on their servers in order to make sure things are properly stored. All about data protection regulations, right? Or it's about enforcing policies on these to make sure that the files are labeled properly and have the right retention schedule attached to them. Or it's about preventing the data from leaving the organization. That's a very big one. So what typically happens there is that companies will use something that's called key or data loss prevention. And with data loss prevention, that's something that you can enable in your enterprise to prevent files from leaving your enterprise that might contain confidential information. And then that's something that the DataXray can do. You can help you detect which files are confidential. That's a pretty common use case for us, actually. It's very detecting which files has the most sensitive information in it. And then we build integrations to things like Microsoft Purview in order to make sure that when that file gets attached to an email and sent externally, you're able to intelligently block those confidential files. So that's the first kind of use case, right? That's that defensive use case, which really is about creating a very healthy data culture in the enterprise. You turn that stuff on and you have confidence that your enterprise data is actually behaving like it's supposed to behave. Mm-hmm. That once you have that, and this is what a lot of companies are finding out now. We were recently talking to a Gartner analyst about this, where they were explaining that a lot of enterprises are finding out that they're not AI ready yet, right? And that's because they haven't implemented a solution like DataXray yet that actually helps the enterprise data do what it needs to do, this unstructured data, right? So then there's this other class of use cases that we are beginning to tackle now, which is around analytics and governance. What historically has happened with this unstructured data is that it's not been particularly that relevant to enterprises. It's relevant in their day-to-day operations, but they've been able to, the best enterprises have been able to exploit their semi-structured and their structured data very effectively. And they haven't, until generative AI had a tool that really lets them mine useful information about all that unstructured data that they have. So in order, now those documents that we've all been writing, that all those Slack messages and emails that we've all been sending, they build a picture of how well a project is doing. They build a picture of how well a team is doing. They build a picture of all the challenges and opportunities that might be inside an enterprise. But until now, it's always been in the dark, right? It's not been that structured data. It's not been that semi-structured data. With a tool like DataXray that's specialized in unstructured data, you can analyze all of that, and you can, for example, curate that information and publish that as data sets for unstructured data discovery. And you can use that with data quality metrics in order to ensure that the claims forms that you have are actually high quality and contain the right information that you need. You have use cases now where that once you understand this data, you can build out AI applications. It's important for, AI agents or retrieval augmented generation, which is RAG. RAG is a solution now that a lot of companies build as a way to collect their documents and make that available to generative AI applications. It's quite common in enterprises now to explore how do we make these set of documents available to an AI. And in order to do that, you really have to understand what's in those documents and then make sure they're continuously updated and sent to that AI. So this is all kind of new use cases that have to do with governance and analytics that we're starting to tackle now as well.
So presumably, I was just thinking about the use cases and the type of industries that would use it. And initially my thought was about large financial institution where there's financial information being presented, or payments and things like that, bank account details, transactions. I was thinking about that. I'm also now thinking about if you're a legal firm and you've got a large volume of legal cases, you can't put those things straight in AI because highly confidential information. You can't expose it to the large language models because then it ceases to become the proprietary property, or it will just be ingested by AI. So what you're doing is you're providing a layer before that. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, exactly. So the way that we approach it is there's always a data discovery and data mapping phase that comes with a project. So we before you can, it goes back to those questions that I was talking about. Before you can send your data to an AI, which is what all enterprises really want to do now because it's incredibly valuable. You really have to understand where that data is, what type it is, and how I can use that data. So in that example that you gave there, you would need to be able to scan all of this casework that you're doing, understand which parts of it you can send to an AI, and understand what policies might be around those particular informations. We do redaction as well. So for example, if there are confidential information in there, then you can use our redaction API in order to just remove those specific bits before they get sent to an AI agent, right? Yeah. That's a very big part of that pipeline. So
legal, pharma, obviously any financial institutions, anything that's got, and every business has got information that doesn't want to share intellectual property. You wouldn't want to expose intellectual property, particularly if there's patents around it, or something that could be changed slightly in order for it. Code bases, I guess. I mean, it sounds like the uses are fairly endless for enterprise, and actually, I'm sure as the world moves on, the amount of data that we're all generating, you'll start, whilst it's something specific for enterprise at the moment, I can see its use cases kind of drifting down. Because there's other businesses out there outside of enterprise which actually are going to have the same problems, right? They're going to have exactly the same problems, although they might not think of it in that way. Because it sounds like what you've got. I asked you earlier, do you have a painkiller or have you got a vitamin? Actually, you've got a painkiller, a vitamin, and a surgeon. You can't. You kind of got three different levels there.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. I think I'm going to be using that. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it does just responding to your point about everyone having this problem. That is true. I think one of the things that we worked really hard on is it's a very different thing to build a product for an enterprise. There are that's the most difficult environment in order to build it in. We build the DataXray to be deployed entirely behind our clients' firewalls in air-gapped environments. In some ways, it's a lot like, it almost has more in common with shipping hardware to a certain extent,
Right.
because once you ship it, you don't know exactly what environment it's going to be run in. We have all sorts of people and processes in order to support it running remotely, all sorts of observability and monitoring tools in order to understand what's going on over there. But we ship the application and it's run in these highly secure environments at the enterprise, and we we just have to make sure it works, and it works well in those conditions. And it's a huge challenge. I am oftentimes envious of SaaS companies that might be able to tweak things several times a day and do blue-green deployments and very rapidly. And yeah, it's more of a challenging environment in order to support these enterprises, and in terms of security and everything.
So what you're saying is you have the complete opposite to lean methodology in...
Yes, I mean, well, we are fans of lean, and agile methodology, and we do operate as quickly as we can. We have inside our engineering team, it's release early, release often. And we've built as best we can, the pipelines in order to just cut down the time it takes to get the features and enhancements live in a client's environment as much as possible. But that is one of the biggest challenges that our engineering team and product teams work on is making sure all that process is there and and ready to go.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So look. Let's talk about the challenges in the marketplace. Not just in the marketplace, but let's talk about the challenges of selling enterprise software or developing enterprise software for clients. How is it? I mean, you'll have long sales cycles, you'll have complex, you'll have many different gatekeepers. What do you find the biggest challenges in selling enterprise software?
You said two of the biggest ones there, particularly those long sales cycles, and long sales cycles and the multiple stakeholders that we need to satisfy. We have been dealing with that for a long time. I think one of the best things that we do is we have a great way now to launch POCs. A lot of the times that's something that just really helps accelerate the conversation. It's difficult to understand how DataXray is going to really get in there and impact your entire data landscape and enterprise data management strategy. The best way to do it is just to try it and to show people what it can do. So we sit down with them, we set up success criteria, and we target a couple use cases. Once you get people looking at the DataXray and showing the problems that it can solve, that certainly helps the process immensely.
Yeah.
Another thing that we're starting to do is we're starting to reach out a little more to the developers in an enterprise. Frequently, we found that we've made the DataXray a lot more extensible recently and a lot more configurable. So, for example, we recently we always try to do our own in-house optical character recognition, OCR. So that's documents that are scanned, that are images, and pulling out text from those. What we found is that their enterprise had been working and already trialing their own OCR products in order to be able to scan their own data. And so recently we've added integrations to even more powerful OCR platforms that are available to the enterprise, or even their own custom OCR applications. So that kind of integration strategy, being ready to go and with the existing structures that are there in an enterprise is critical. You have to be ready you have to go in with an adaptable, extensible product that can really respond to the needs of an enterprise. Yeah.
Okay. So that's some of the challenges about working in the enterprise space, and about how you've adapted, with delivering a proof of concept so they can literally try it. They're getting a taste of what the product is. That makes a lot of sense. In some ways, it doesn't actually sound very complex, as in the solution that you're providing, I'm sure has massive degrees of complexity. But in terms of what the product offering is, it seems pretty clear what it does. Who are you finding is the blocker in this? Is there a particular set of gatekeepers which are slightly harder to get around than others?
I think there are some, in terms of blockers, there are some, let's call them, there's some built-in default solutions that an enterprise might try to use. There are things, for example, like Microsoft Purview, which is we are to a certain extent fans of Microsoft Purview. We integrate it and we use it for the DLP solution. But for example, we haven't found that clients have had a tremendous amount of success building out a large classification framework with Purview. So there are times where you really need a bespoke piece of software to do this unstructured data scanning, like DataXray, right? Convincing people that we're the right solution for that unstructured data scanning is important, because we're a much more powerful and configurable solution, and we can meet the needs of multiple stakeholders given how sophisticated our classification frameworks can be, right? So there are occasionally we will encounter a team in the enterprise that says, we've already done this unstructured data scanning, but it needs to be done right, and it needs to be done continuously. And so those are the kind of things that we sort of bring to the
So there are some legacy products in the marketplace, or from large players like Microsoft. What your solution does, what it's supposed to do far more effectively, and provides that precision which perhaps other solutions don't. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Why did you choose a enterprise solution as opposed to a SaaS solution? Because you've got, there's huge problems with enterprise. It's a great way to burn cash flow. When you develop an enterprise level customer base, you've got very long wait times, very long sales cycles. You've got multiple stakeholders. Those multiple stakeholders can change. Another solution may or may not come into the marketplace. You can't always get the same people at the table. Sometimes the budgeting and the funding changes.
All that.
It's harder to get up to. With the SaaS solution, it's harder to get up to the kind of numbers, but in some ways it's kind of easier because you have great customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. You can do lean marketing. What is it just the enterprise level businesses that have got this problem, or is it? Yeah. So why enterprise?
So my co-founder Kyle, the CEO at Ohalo, we've always been interested in these ideas around data governance and helping people share data more safely, more quickly, more effectively. When we started Ohalo, that was something that was just already baked into the mission, and a shared interest of both of ours. So with that in mind, we just went where the pain was. And we surveyed, we spent, hours and hours talking to customers and potential customers and people data privacy professionals, and we realized that enterprises are the ones that are suffering from this, and there is a certain person at the enterprise that isn't being helped by the existing solutions, and we've always wanted to build their magic wand where they can just point the DataXray at their problem and have it all organized and solved and cleaned up.
So you went with the majority of the customers where the biggest pain is, as opposed to, I guess what you've gone for the surgery/painkiller, as opposed to what's probably for some businesses at this stage anyway more likely going to be a vitamin pill. So it's not a minor inconvenience for these companies, for enterprise businesses. It's going to be a significant problem, and one that can stop them from moving forward with their adoption of AI in their
Definitely.
yeah, okay. And then they'll obviously all large enterprise, any large business whatsoever is adopting AI very quickly because they need to improve the productivity. I mean, the UK is the ranks in Europe in terms of productivity. In terms of capita per head, it's pretty poor. But then again, I mean, you're based in the UK, but you've got a product which is obviously a global product, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. We have recently been expanding into the Japanese market recently as well.
Okay.
And that's been very interesting and productive for us too. I mean, we have some great partners over there, and yeah, we actually started Ohalo in Japan, so it's a bit of a return to the roots.
Oh, right. Okay.
For Kyle and I, yeah,
That's
just
really
just coincidentally.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, that's fascinating. I mean, not the
But yeah,
Japan thing specifically, just where.
we are quite a global company. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm based in the UK. Kyle, the co-founder, is based in the United States, and we have a lot of US clients, and and are currently expanding.
Okay. So I've already asked the question about why enterprise and what the challenges are in selling enterprise level software. What are the other challenges in the business?
I think the time it takes to build a great product is something that I think about a lot. I look back, there's always been some things that we've tried to do from the start. One of them was just that level of scale that that it has to perform at. And when you add a new feature to DataXray, you have to make sure it performs at a very high at a very high speed and throughput yeah and robustness as well. So when I look at the product that we built, I see that it's been built brick by brick over the course of the past 7 years, with lots of lessons along the way. Sometimes you have to take hard decisions about, deprecating certain features so that you can unlock this next level of scale and efficiency and delivery cadence. And there's no shortcuts in building a great product. It really takes time. I think that's something that I'm quite pleased at Ohalo, is that we have always, in terms of a company, grown organically and slowly and piece by piece, and it's given us actually the right time to build a product that stands up and works well inside these environments that I was talking about before. I think early on we had the choice of raising much more money at a much higher valuation, but that wasn't something that we wanted to do, because nothing can replace the time that you spend actually trying this out with a client over the course of several months and learning those lessons. That's something, nothing replaces that. We would have learned the same lesson if we had a team of 500 or a team of 50, right? It's just the time to start slow and build it right and learn those lessons with clients together is something that I think is.
But you guys are in it for the long term as well, right? Or the long haul?
Yes.
And because you talked earlier about the fact that your background, enterprise data is your thing.
Yes.
It seems unlikely that you kind of hit a valuation or perception of evaluation, decide that you're suddenly going to go and play on the beach for a while. The big difference, the big challenge with venture capital is, of course, the clock starts ticking. And obviously the investors need to see a return, and where's that return going to come from? And it's rarely in dividends, it's going to be on an exit. To realise that value. So therefore, I think one of the challenges here is the fact that if your investors are not aligned with the founders' desires to why they're building the company, when those whys aren't aligned, then because I think a lot of people get involved in tech, and it's a route to the obligatory 5-year exit. Every founder or there's very few businesses actually sell, right? So it's 0.1% of businesses that are formed actually get sold. So a lot fail. A lot just kind of drift, and some reach great valuations, etc. But they don't often have that kind of that moment when they reach a peak value, and the founders head off to the beach and kind of get the retirement. And it's always,
I know.
they always tell me 5 years. I speak to businesses. I'm like, when do you want to exit your business? Oh, it's 5 years. Okay. When's the last time you did the 5-year plan? Oh, about 10 years ago.
Wow.
So there's a couple of things in that. So you're not heading to the beach anytime soon, by the sounds of it.
No, no, no. I wouldn't want to. I mean, if I were, I would at some point leave the beach again and try to do the exact same thing that I'm doing now. Yeah, I hear you. I have also found that as a founder, there is an enormous amount of conventional wisdom that is geared towards this idea that you do need to just build and build and build without laying even a proper foundation so that you can exit in 5 years. And we have chosen a different path, one that is much more grounded. Yeah, it's always been about building a company for us first, and building a team, and building a product, and focusing on those fundamentals. I think early on we never talked about a 5-year plan and which beaches we want to spend our time tanning on.
So that's an interesting thing, because the plan doesn't have to be a financial one, as in, well, there should always be a financial plan, of course. But the why shouldn't always be about an exit. Sometimes the why, the purpose of the business, the North Star, if you like, of a business can be the vision and the mission about what the business is about, as opposed to an exit. So is there a why for you guys? Is there a vision and a mission behind the company that keeps you focused on the road ahead?
So in terms of, it's funny, we've really been, Phil and I have been talking a lot about the vision of the company. He recently came to London, and we sort of revised it, revamped it recently, because the world has changed since we started Ohalo, particularly with regard to all this generative AI. We really are intensely interested in how enterprises are going to be able to use generative AI in the future. That's the thing that we think we are the most suited to help with. It really goes back to those very fundamental problems. It's not difficult to use AI now. It's difficult to use it at the scale and with the right level of confidence at that enterprise level, right? Yeah. So we see a world where a new joiner to an enterprise, if it's 2030, imagine you are starting a new job at a large financial institution. It's your first day. You're a business analyst. You have to use data in order to be able to come up with the right strategy, deliver the analytics to the C-suite, and you would be relieved to learn that they are using something, that they're using DataXray at that organization, because you would know exactly which data you can use, which data you can't. All of this is defined in enterprise policy, and because of that, you can get started just on day one. You know where your data is, you know what formats it is in, you know why, you know who you have to get sign off if you want to use it for what particular use cases. All of this stuff, that's the stuff that's holding people back now, and it's a solvable problem, and it's also one that's going to stop the adoption of AI, because an AI agent is, when it comes online for the first time, it's also going to ask itself those questions that a new joiner to a company will ask. What data can I pull from? I'm getting this query from a user. What data can I pull from in order to answer this question? Am I allowed to use it in order to answer this question? Should I actually open up a request and, as an AI agent, say, I have this request coming in? Can I explain to the user that as an AI agent, I currently don't have access to the information, but it's there, and in order for me to access it, we need to put together a access request form in order to access it. So it's just about that connective tissue, that those policies that inform how data is used in an enterprise. That's where we see the world going, and that's where we see, we are talking about that with our product and engineering teams today. Is, every feature that we add is building that world where you can, use the data that you have with authority, and you can and you feel fully enabled, and your AI is fully enabled and enriched by your unstructured data, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, in some ways, you've got me thinking about the kind of analogy. I often think in analogies, hence the vitamin pill and the through to the surgeon thing. And it kind of, when I think about the product and I think about what the solution is, it's kind of putting a moat around the data that in heart already exists, and then having the bridge to be able to access it. So the guys kind of on the outside trying to get this island of data in the middle, and it can't reach it currently until it's got the right bridge to get past that moat. So I think that's kind of how I see it, kind of conceptually. So the last,
And yeah, if I may, yeah, and just to elaborate a particular point there, it's even just not about security. It's not about just having the right key. It's about having the right governance around it, and the right, so that the right goods can cross the moat and go through the drawbridge, more than it might be about the key to unlock the drawbridge. Even it's
passport control, isn't it?
Yeah, passport control, exactly. Yes,
So
exactly.
so a couple of last questions. So number one, what would you have done differently had you started the business? If you were starting the business today, and you still had the same technologies available to you at that time, what would you have done differently? Not from an engineering perspective necessarily, but in order to develop the business.
I think we were talking about that conventional wisdom. There were a few times where we made business decisions that were based on conventional wisdom. Once we hit product market fit, it was time to build out a sales engine that could just take off on its own, and we hired a huge sales team. But we realized that there was a certain point where it wasn't necessarily making sense to us. That would have worked if we were a SaaS company, and I don't think we'd sort of realized that it was something that we needed a more delicate touch and a more account driven approach to these sales cycles that could last potentially 12 months. But we built out a sales team that was focused on that was adapted to the conventional wisdom at the time, right? But it never. I think what I would tell myself is that these things, they have to really make sense to you, and you don't necessarily need to do something because the conventional wisdom is telling you how to do it. A classic thing on the engineering side would be about picking boring technology, as they say. You really want to pick the tried and true. There's only very key places where you can innovate effectively, and you have to be quite strategic about those. So, AI was a big early play for us, and everything else you want to build, you want to pick the most sort of robust and tried and true technology as possible. If you use every new toolkit that comes out, you are going to be using potentially technology that is not fully mature yet. And especially for our enterprise clients, there are, that stability and robustness is going to be more important than than whatever fancy toolkits that you use in order to
Okay.
to drive engineering.
Yeah, because large enterprises often have quite large legacy systems, and they're going to be using older technology. And no doubt their CTOs and their CIOs inside the business won't necessarily want the newest shiny toy. They want something that works.
Yes.
I think the old adage, although it's probably not used as much anymore, is no one ever get fired for hiring IBM.
Yeah.
There's a certain truth in that. I mean, there's security risks, as in people's job security if they're choosing shiny toys. So yeah, that's a wise thing. What's the just one last question, which is from running the business in general? What's been your biggest learning? Been your biggest takeaway?
Probably about my biggest learning is probably about how important it is to build the right team and what difference individuals make in the organization. I think there is in the company and the product that we have today, I can see many individuals, different brushstrokes that have put the painting together, so to speak, to use some analogies for you, Matt. I think it's been, the DataXray wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for the people that we work with, and they're just incredibly important. I'd sometimes wonder if just even had we made this hiring decision instead of this hiring decision, we would have ended up with a different product that would have performed differently, and we would have had a different company. It really is just a collection of individuals that are unified in this mission. Yeah, I don't think I ever expected it to be for the human side. I always thought the human side was going to be important. I wasn't necessarily expecting to see how it was going to be reflected in a great product as obviously as it is today.
I mean, companies are a sum of the people parts, if you like. So, getting the right people is super important, and getting the wrong people can be fatal to a business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
The expression that I've heard, and I've used it on a few times myself, which is it's better to have a hole than an a-hole. And
yes, understood.
That can be really challenging. So look, Alistair, thank you so much for enlightening me about the world of structured or unstructured data and semi-structured data. I didn't think I was going to go down that particular rabbit hole and still be interested when I got to anywhere near the bottom of it. So
I'm very glad.
I found it fascinating.
Very glad.
I mean, I knew a tiny bit about data structure, but you've explained it brilliantly. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Clearly see a need for the product. I mean, and in fact, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about actually, if you're a large business, enterprise level businesses now must be looking at this and thinking, how do we get around this problem? I mean, it seems to me, as you described it, it seems to me such an acute problem. I can't understand how you don't use it, that you don't have a solution for it in your business. I'll be getting some of my buddies in who work in enterprises, and who work in data in those enterprises to check you guys out for sure.
Good.
So DataXray,
yes,
fascinating product, absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, the way I see it is that enterprises are leaving money on the table if they don't handle this problem. Properly. Yeah.
Well, it's leaving money.
Thank you, Matt.
It's more than that, actually. It's leaving money and causing themselves risk.
Yes.
So it's at both ends. It's the thing about you run away from pain towards pleasure. So it's tough. It's tough. So look, thank you so much for your time today, Alistair. It's been a real pleasure, as I say.
Likewise.
More about the world of unstructured data and how to get over it. So thank you so much. Let's keep in contact. I want to find out more about what you guys are doing. Really interesting subject, and I want to know more about it. So thank you so much. Let's speak again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's speak again soon. Exactly.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care, Matt.